Here we go. Next up, adding luster to zinc, I am so pleased to welcome our friend Brandon McDonald, CEO of Fireweed Zinc, a Yukon exploration development company focused on their large-scale flagship zinc, lead, and silver Macmillan Pass Project. Fireweed began trading on the TSX Venture with the symbol FWZ in 2017. By 2018, they released a PEA on Macmillan. Today, it is thought to be one of the world's largest undeveloped zinc resources, and I think this year is going to be a big drilling year for the company. Brandon is an ex-banker, Macquarie banker that is, and is now going to walk us through the Fireweed story. Brandon, hello and welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me. I have a suspicion that you heard my audio test earlier, which I apologize for. As Vanessa so kindly said, I'll be talking to you today about the Macmillan Pass Project located in Yukon Territory, Canada. To quickly summarize before we get into too much detail here, I think a lot of people have been talking about this, and you got Stefan with a great introduction to this seminar, talking about the nascent bull market for base metals. This is started to come a little bit of a hiccup today, which I was questioning the wisdom of people panicking today, but nonetheless they have. But this is a bull market incoming, and this is getting fueled by the EV transition and the global electrification trend. This is going to get fueled by massive infrastructure spending. CRU predicts that about 18 to 20% of infrastructure spend goes to galvanized steel. So when you think about a $3 trillion infrastructure package coming from the Biden administration, you think about what the impact of that could be on a metal like zinc. And when you think about zinc, you think about pretty clear standout in the zinc development space is the Macmillan Pass project that belongs 100% to Fireweed. So we've already attracted the attention of tech. They've invested in us. And we've also attracted the attention of a lot of other big groups who are watching as this project, a really incredible project, plays out. So we had an incredible 2020 year, which took a long time to get results out of, as was common with a lot of juniors. But following on that this year, we are going to have a pretty big drill program that's going to build on that, focusing on the boundary zone and the new discovery in the sort of central west of the project, and looking to reestablish and grow this project as a standout in the space. And lastly, I kind of say here, Fireweed remains cheap. And what do I mean by that? And this is a story that just not just about zinc, it's about all base metals. But I think, the all cash purchase of Arizona Mining by South 32 in 2018 was a great example of what standout assets, development assets in this space transact for. That was a 2.1 billion Canadian transaction on a project that, on the basis of our last resource statement, was about 3 times the size of us. But what I want to show throughout this presentation is that our project's growing substantially. I think we have a pretty clear view to being nearly as big or perhaps even bigger than Taylor Hermosa. So as the market wakes up to the reality of the need for metals and the shortage of quality development projects, you're going to start to see one by one, and then eventually a torrent of projects and companies getting revalued. This has already happened, with standouts in the copper space like Philo and what have you. But it's going to start happening in the broader metal circuit as well. Fireweed is a purpose-built company that went public in 2017. I'm looking at that now, and that share structure is outdated. I apologize. I knew there was something I'd missed in this presentation as I was updating it. We're part of the discovery groups and led by John Robbins, who's had a tremendous amount of success. We've got a pretty great board there that brings a diverse group, diverse suite of experience. And we always, the discovery group philosophy and the Fireweed philosophy is one that there's no real shortcuts, and you're looking to build a legitimate company. You're not a promo play. You're working on legitimate projects and thinking long-term of them. You're taking ownership over long-term opportunities and challenges, and you're focusing with that on value creation for all shareholders. And we make sure that we have skin in the game and that we're aligned with our shareholders. And just to give you a rundown of who the discovery group companies are, obviously a lot of incredibly successful companies in that group, both past and present. So Without further ado, our project, for those of you not familiar, located in eastern Yukon Territory, Canada, accessible via road, and also has an airstrip within the project. If you're going to develop a project like this, you already have pre-existing road access. You got a government commitment to improve that road, and then therefore you've got access to deep sea ports at Skagway and Haines, as well as access to railhead, which could potentially take concentrate to the trail smelter belonging to Teck. So the 2018 PEA, this is 3 years old now, is important context, was pretty great. So the resource that fed that, about 11.2 million tons indicated, 39.5 million tons inferred at around that 10% zinc equivalent, fed into a PEA that hit all the right marks, large, healthy after-tax NPV, healthy after-tax IRR, long multi-cycle mine life, which is critical when you're considering what sort of project and mid-tiers and majors target. But both of these are ultimately stale dated. So the resource took into account only the Tom and Jason deposits, and even then, not the entirety of those deposits. We know they're bigger than was stated in 2018. And critically, does not include the boundary zone, which is where the focus of our drilling has been for last year and will be this year. We've got government commitment on the road improvement, which I mentioned, which will offset quite a bit of our CapEx. So we think when we get around to our next updated resource in PEA, you're going to be looking at a very, very different project. What you see here is so it's a relic of a past project that will not exist anymore when we reflect the reality of it. And to give you an idea of what a small slice of our project that those studies encompassed, they were really only not really, it's absolutely only the Tom and Jason deposits in the southeast of our project. So this is 940 square kilometers that traces a major district bounding fault that we think was the fluid conduit for the production of these deposits hundreds of millions of years ago. So Tom and Jason, obviously excellent resources, but the end zone, boundary west, and other potential targets around this area also have substantial size potential. But like I said, don't forget about Tom and Jason. Tom East, a very high grade zone. We hit a step out there in 2018, 16 meters of 21% zinc, 13.5% lead, 240 grams silver. An incredible step out showing that high grade zone has more yet to give. Working this year on using some advanced technology to image the location and geometry of Tom East and this potential offset that we hit. And hoping to have some clarity for really targeting it specifically and precisely next year. And to Jason, likewise, some excellent high-grade hits, 14 meters of 7% zinc, 5% lead, and 120 grams silver, not within the resource. So that's a fault offset again of Jason South that has not been followed up and needs to be pulled into the resource with a few more drill holes. And we also believe the two zones of Jason, Jason South and Jason Main, are probably connected at depth in a syncline. And we think that it's a high degree of possibility that at the bottom of that syncline, at the hinge of it, there's been concentration of galena, which is which is a lead sulfide, which will also contain the silver, which is particularly prone to pressure solution and remobilization to the lower end of these structures. But let's talk about boundary zones. That's what's got a lot of people's attention. So 2019, this was an area that we picked up off Teck. Nothing had been done since the 80s. They had hit some broad low-grade intersections. And we came in 2019, drilled a couple holes. The first one, 230 meters of 3.7% zinc from surface. The second one, 230 meters of 4.5% zinc from surface. And critically within that, high-grade intervals. The first 100 meters of that from surface, 8.7% zinc, as well as including right at the major fault, which we think again is the fluid conduit. 6.5 meters of 43.5% zinc. So when boundary zone broadly, you would say this is a lower grade potential zinc deposit, but locally absolutely bonanza grade. And our 2020 drilling followed up on this. Showed down dip continuity, 212 meters of 4.4% zinc, including almost 26% zinc over 6 meters in the lower end of that. And we'd had this conceptual view of boundary, the mineralization there not looking like Tom and Jason, these sort of veins and stockworks hosted in conglomerates and dimictites and volcanics. We thought that maybe, like you see at Tom and Jason, and like you see at other classic exotic deposits like Red Dog, et cetera, where you get this plumbed into a barite horizon, you get the metal-rich fluids replacing the barite and producing these zinc and lead sulfides. So this was a theory. We didn't see it at boundary zone, but we thought it was a possibility. So we did a bunch of gravity over boundary zone last year, and that led to the extension of anomaly around boundary significantly to the west, and the drilling and success and discovery of boundary west, which is just to the west of boundary zone here, as you can see from this map. So what was interesting about boundary zone is, yeah, we saw the vein style mineralization or boundary zone west. What was interesting about it is that we saw the same style mineralizations we see at boundary zone, but we also saw these new styles. This Tom and Jason style, yes, at the top, like you see at Tom and Jason, barite hosted, but also this Red Dog style, complete replacement of a barite horizon, massive pyrites, phallerite, very dense rock. And then below that, an entirely new sequence of mineralization on older rocks than we'd ever seen mineralized, that has sort of Howard's Pass, style mineralization there, hosted in not in stratiform, but not in barite. So this really this was a fantastic discovery because first, the grades locally very impressive. 76 meters of 4.2% zinc, sorry, and almost 26 grams silver. And in the lower sequence, 2.1% zinc over 225 meters. So this was an extremely interesting hit. It was a conceptual success because it demonstrated that our thinking on the project was correct. It was an absolute success in terms of the assays we got back, and it's likely going to substantially expand boundary zone, which we were already thinking was a 9-digit, target in terms of tonnage. And now we think, there's such immense potential here. And so our new conceptual model of boundary zone is this lower sequence that I was talking about, that's sort of a Howard's Pass-like system, which has the vein style feeder system underneath it as well. And then another vein style sequence at the top and massive sulfides, either Red Dog or Tom and Jason style at the top. And, that's just at boundary zone. And we've talked a little bit about Tom and Jason, but what we see along this trend here is absolutely amazing. I think it's very easy for junior mining companies to stand up and say, hey, we've got we're district scale land package. It's like, well, a district scale land package just requires you have a large land package. But do you have a district? Do you have a repeatable thesis for discovering more deposits? Do you have multiple deposits? Do you have evidence of more? In this case, absolutely we do. It is abundantly clear that what we call the fertile corridor that's currently tracing the Hess fault. This is a reactivated, originally growth fault from the Devonian and earlier. This was clearly a fluid conduit, and where you see the intersection of this fault with second order faults, you get the formation of the Tom deposit, the Jason deposit, boundary zone, end zone, and as well as all these other potential targets along here. So we're immensely excited by this, and we're not the only one. So when you think about, okay, so that's great. We've got, an excellent study. We've got excellent exploration potential. We've got this new zone, boundary zone that is being, firmed up. What does that mean? What does that mean for value of a company like this? Well, you take the original 2018 PEA. You think about, okay, so that produced a 450 million NPV. You would tweak that by removing the cost of the road. Now that we have government commitment, you would tweak that with the engineering improvements we've done since then. You would look at the resource expansion at Tom and Jason and what impact that would have on it. And then you would add in something like boundary zone, which would have a sudden massive impact in the resource you would pull into a mine study here, and potentially the blue sky exploration there. So that 450 million NPV, after-tax NPV from 2018 is like the core of this onion. And there are so many layers we're building on top of this to grow it. We really think that's just the start of what is going to be a massive and truly economic project. And so when we think about our roadmap here, this year we had thought about trying to crank out a updated resource and PEA early next year. We don't think that's giving our project the best shot, so we're going to take 2 years to drill before we do that. This year, we're going to focus on step outs and boundary zone area. We're going to do at least some drilling at Tom, at least one hole there. We're going to be exploring on new targets with geochem, geophysics, while simultaneously be doing the metallurgical studies at boundary. That'll lead to next year, which is going to be all definition drilling. And I say definition drilling, this is really only definition to probably an inferred level, and that all funnels into this new global resource for Tom, Jason boundary, end zone, maybe other zones. It depends on where we're at the end of next year, and a new PEA. And I've talked about throwing around terms like district, and terms like world class get thrown around, and terms like tier 1 get thrown around. And I think everyone has a different definition of what a tier 1 project is. To me, a tier 1 zinc project is one that has a large multi-cycle mine life, has first or second quartile costs, and is or near top 10 production profile globally. And we think we're going to hit that, and we think this has a very good chance of being north of $1 billion NPV, and we think this is going to absolutely radically change the perception of this company. So that's it. I will turn it over to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon. That was a great presentation. Really happy to hear the update. So how much drilling do you plan to do this summer?
I think we'll aim for around 3,500 to 4,000. It depends. We actually have a private placement open right now. It's a flow-through private placement, so we're being picky about the shareholders. Obviously, you can get some colorful and perhaps less than supportive shareholders coming, that sort of thing. So you got to be careful. But if we get the quality we want, maybe we upsize that, and maybe we grow that target. But it is going to be, if not, it will certainly be our second biggest year, and there might be a chance that it eclipses 2018.
Okay. And this financing is going to carry you through till?
Yeah, comfortably into next year for sure.
Okay, excellent. And a question as well, why was the updated resource and PEA pushed back a year?
Yeah, I think I touched on that a little bit. We could get an inferred resource on boundary this year if we really just wanted to do that, and a little bit perhaps on boundary west. We don't think that would be reflective of the full potential there, and it would also miss an opportunity to define that offset at Tom East, the offset at Jason South, et cetera, before we put out an updated resource and PEA. So it would mean we put out a new PEA. It would be a big improvement, but it would not really reflect the reality of the project. So we think that the right thing to do is take the extra year, get the necessary drilling in, really put a PEA out that looks an awful lot like what we intend to put out eventually as a PFS and mine plan.
Okay, awesome. Well, steady wins the race, they say. And I was watching a video, a recent proactive video, and you were describing these muon detectors, and I lamented not getting you on our segment for with regards to technology, a previous AdCap webinar. Anyway, so tell us a little bit about these muon detectors. Is it real time? How does it work? Maybe.
Sure. I'm just a little thirsty here.
Oh, yes, that rings a bell.
So muons are these subatomic particles that are, traveling through the cosmos and get stopped by dense material as they hit the Earth, right? So you can put these detectors below surface, and you can detect muons and as well the direction they're coming from. So the density of muons you get from any one direction tells you how much mass is between you and the cosmos effectively at that spot. It's a bit like an X-ray, right? So in an X-ray, the X-rays travel through you and are blocked by your bones. So muon, tomography is very similar to an X-ray in terms of it's looking up and it's saying, where am I getting muons from? Where are the dense areas? So when you consider how thick it is to the surfaces there as well, that helps you figure out what the average density is in any given direction between the detector and surface. So then you take multiple detectors and start looking at it from different angles, and you can start triangulating in on dense bodies. And that's what we're ultimately doing. This doesn't work for every style deposit, but for ours, particularly the high grade zones have a substantial density contrast versus the host or the surrounding country rocks. So using something like this to vector on them is potentially very powerful. And this is a new technology. This is the first time it's deployed in this style of exploration downhole. So we're extremely excited to be involved with this.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about it. I mean, something like gravity, I look at a gravity meter and it's the same technology since the 60s or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So great. We'll look forward to that. And do you have any, let's see, how are we doing for time here? Quickly, look for zinc price.
Yeah, I think all metals kind of got hit today because China's selling some of their reserve. This is incredibly bullish. I would just say to tell everyone that if China is selling reserves to suppress prices, this means they're tapping their reserve, which is bullish, and it means they're disincentivizing new production, which is bullish. This exacerbates the eventual metal supply crisis. So I don't have an exact number. I think if China keeps doing this, zinc can be lower in 6 months than it is now. But for projects like ours that take time to build and that are going to be producing for 20, 30 years, this is extremely bullish.